Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. Let's talk about a big fight that's going to be on the Saturday coming. So that's the 19th of July, 2025. It's the rematch between Tszyu and SEBASTIAN Fundora. And of course, they fought before. They fought in March of last year, 2024. And SEBASTIAN Fundora was a late substitute. I can't remember who for offhand. I should look that up before I started this video, but you tell me in the comment section. But Tszyu, to the surprise of many, lost a split decision. I think one guy had it 116, 112. One guy, I think, had it the other way, and then there was a 115, 113. But it was very, very, very close fight and a very bloody fight because Tszyu had this horrendous cut on his forehead. I think it was his scalp. And it was just pissing blood. And how the fight wasn't stopped, I do not know. I think at the time people were saying, my God, that was a bloodbath. And it was a bloodbath. Not just for the cut to Tszyu, which was bad enough. And yes, I think it probably should have been stopped. But Fundora had a busted nose and a cut inside his mouth and was swallowing lots of blood, which if you've ever had that, if you've ever had the misfortune of having done that, which I have, immediately you feel nauseous, you feel sick, it slows you down, you think you're going to puke, and the whole thing was just an absolute car crash of a fight. And it was a type of fight where you thought neither of these guys is going to be the same afterwards. Now, Fundora, like I say, was a late substitute. And I think that was a shocking decision by Tszyu's team to take on an opponent who, at the 11th hour, who's 6'5.5" in height, an 80-inch reach. He has been stopped before. He's got one defeat on his record to Brian Mendoza. He got knocked out in 7 rounds, SEBASTIAN Fundora. But he was coming off that defeat. But even so, the dimensions and the guy, he's not really I think if I had to guess, I'd say probably they thought he's not really that big a puncher because he's currently got 14 KOs and 22 wins. But he also likes to fight small, which is how he got clipped by Mendoza. And he was knocked flat by Mendoza. I mean, he calls himself the Towering Inferno. And if you've ever seen that 1970s movie, it was like the Towering Inferno coming down, it was a shocking knockout, really. But nevertheless, for a guy who's he's only 27 now. He was even younger then. For a young guy who's, confident, all right, he's suffered a setback. But suddenly he's got a chance of the WBO title, which Tszyu held, and the WBC vacant title was on the line. He's going to be up for it. And if you're taking on a guy with such a freak, a 154-pounder who's almost 6'6", with those dimensions, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Even if he does fight small, which he does, and he's a bloody southpaw as well, SEBASTIAN Fundora. So I think Tszyu's team got it completely wrong. I mean, Tszyu is now 30. Okay, he's an orthodox fighter. His record is 25 wins with 18 KOs and 2 defeats. And the other defeat was immediately after the Fundora upset. He took on Bakran Murtazaliev. Again, this was very poor matchmaking by Tszyu's team. They took him for granted, Murtazaliev. Murtazaliev is a good fighter, but he held that IBF super-welter belt. And they thought, oh, great, we'll just nick that off him. And like he was nothing. The guys are nearly 6 foot tall. He's 5'11", 5'11 and a half, 6 foot, something like that. Tall for, nice tall, 74-inch reach. He was in his prime. What was this? He's probably about 31. I think he's 32 now. He was coming off a good win, stoppage win over Jack Colkay, that was over in Germany. So he obviously travels well. And it was a late stoppage as well. It was so he can pace himself and retain a bit of power late on. By the way, the Kulke fight was for the vacant IBF belt. But the guy he's going to be confident. He's young. He's managed by Igor Klimas, and Klimas don't waste time with second raters. It was an awful matchmaking, and the way that Tszyu just walked in there and thought, I'm going to just, take this belt off him. Well, unfortunately for him, he got smashed to bits. He was down the writing was on the wall in the first round, to be honest. But in the the second round, he was on the floor. Was it 3 times? And then in the third round, he was he down twice or once? I lost count of the knockdowns, to be honest. But either way, this was reminiscent of what Daniel Dubois did to Anthony Joshua. Murtazaliev just smashed Tszyu to bits, and it was a shattering defeat, far worse in a sense than Tszyu's defeat to Fundora, because against Fundora he showed a lot of stuff. He showed a lot of heart, showed a lot of guts, his determination. He showed some skill. He proved he could fight through, real adversity with that horrendous cut on the head. But against Murtazaliev, he just got blown clean out of the water. It was like stepping on a landmine. He blew up, and it was terrible defeat. Well, he's come back with one win, Tszyu has. And that's against Joseph Spencer, who was 19-1. I'd seen Spencer before. I knew he didn't have an open hell of beating Tszyu. At best, he's probably a gatekeeper type with a rather flattering record. Tszyu stopped him in 4 rounds. He'd previously been stopped. Spencer, I saw that fight, the one that he was stopped by, I can't remember, is it Ramos or Ramos Jr., someone like that, and he got stopped in 7 rounds. He was completely outclassed. So I thought, he ain't got open hell of beating Tszyu. And sure enough, this was back in Australia. Tszyu got that sort of confidence-building win. Meanwhile, Fundora, since defeating Tszyu, has only fought once himself, and that is against Cordell Booker. And Booker was another one, 23-1, so he had a flashy record coming in. But that one defeat was to Amo Williams in a round. Austin Williams just obliterated him in 1 round. And then he moved down from middleweight Booker did, to light middle. But he was never at the races. And he got stopped in the 4th round as well. And so, Fundora retained the WBO and WBC belts. Now, the question is, who's going to win this rematch? And it isn't just. I think Fundora is difficult to beat anyway. Again, because of that ridiculous height and reach. Even though he likes to get in the phone booth and have a little row up close and personal on the inside, I just feel that. In the case of Tszyu, it isn't just the fact that Fundora's beaten him before, because that was a close, tough fight. And like I say, Tszyu showed an awful lot against a ridiculously tall southpaw. He still, he's winning rounds. You could make a case for him beating Fundora. I thought Fundora won it by a couple of points. But you could make it, say, a case for a draw. It's not that defeat that bugs me about Tszyu. It's the Murtazaliev defeat. The fact that he was smashed to pieces so quickly and so destructively by Murtazaliev. I wonder, even though he came back and had that win over Joe Spencer, I wonder if that's left its mark psychologically. And, Fundora, even though I've said a couple of times during this video, he does like to get in close. He does like to give up that ridiculous height. But don't make any mistake about it, he's got very good skills, and he can use that jab. He can get drawn into a fight, but he can certainly soften you up with the jab. He did it in the first fight with Tszyu. Tszyu was trying to be his usual aggressive self. Fundora had plenty of sticky patches in that fight. They both did, didn't they? It was a bloodbath. But he was able to contain Tszyu's rushes. And even though he's been stopped, Fundora, I still think he's got a pretty decent chin. I think he kind of hung himself against Mendoza by just fighting with stupid tactics. If you go back 6 years, Fundora does have a split draw, I think it was, over 10 against a fighter whose name escapes me. But that was about 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe even longer. But since then, he is that box fighter. If you look at his fight with Erickson Lubin, again, he got floored in that fight in the 6th or 7th round. But he ended up really beating up Lubin badly. Lubin's face was a mask of swellings and cuts. And it wasn't just a slugging match. That was from the jab and from the combinations. Fundora has a very good array of punches. He puts his punches together well. And again, I repeat, a southpaw. So a lot of fighters, they're not too keen on fighting the southpaws. But that Lubin fight, that was for the WBC interim belt. There was something to fight for, but it was one of those bloodbath fights. But he's also proved that he can go the distance, do the full 12. As with Tszyu, obviously, he went the distance with Tszyu. Carlos Ocampo, he won a unanimous decision over him. So he can do that. He can do those distances, and he can get you out of there as well. But he will box, look for the openings, work for the openings, and then let the power punches go. It goes without saying, he won't have very far to look for Tim Tszyu. Tim Tszyu is a front-footed fighter. That seems to be his natural sort of default setting. He likes to go forward. An orthodox fighter. He likes to be very aggressive. He likes to stamp his authority, mental as well as physical, onto the opponent. And he tried that with Fundora in the first fight. And at times it looked like he might be getting there. But then there was that horrendous gash on the head. And that kind of knocked him out of his stride, understandably so. And it gave Fundora a little bit to think of. But don't forget, like I said, Fundora had a busted nose and a cut mouth. It wasn't like Tszyu wasn't finding him. But I think in a sense, the damage to Fundora made him a little bit reticent, made him box a bit more, made him, reminded him that he does have these advantages in terms of dimensions. And he's going to box a bit and fight when he has to, not fight when he chooses to. And I think that actually worked in his favour, and obviously the appalling cut to Tszyu's head helped him as well. How do I see this rematch going? I've got to lean towards Fundora. I think Fundora they've been in with each other, obviously. I think Fundora will box, use that jab. He won't have to look too far for Tszyu. Once Fundora gets his rhythm and his range and his timing going, I think he'll start to really outbox Tszyu. Tszyu has got to jump on him early. I don't see this as being where Tszyu has got to start quick. He's got to get in close. He's got to let his hands go, and he's got to kind of take some chances. I mean, he did this against Murtazaliev and got found out, but Murtazaliev, I think, probably hits a bit harder than Fundora. You can also say that Murtazaliev, maybe not got lucky. That's the wrong word. But Tszyu got caught a little bit cold early on. Tszyu was too reckless, though. I mean, he's a sucker for both the left hook and the right hand. And those are two punches that Fundora has. Fundora's punch selection it's not always what it should be. He does tend to get stuck in. But when he sticks to his boxing, there's some real good stuff on display. He's actually, his sister, Gabriela Fundora, who is the undisputed flyweight champion, she's got more spite than Big Brother. Sebastian tends to, he doesn't put as much meat on his punches. Maybe just doesn't hit as hard as his little sis. I don't know, pound for pound. But I can see him having fought Tszyu before and it being a real grueling bloodbath, him sticking to his boxing, that southpaw jab, trying to offset Tszyu. Tszyu will come in. Fundora will be a little bit conservative for the first couple of rounds. And then once he avoids the heavy artillery of Tszyu, I can see him finding his rhythm, finding his range, controlling it with the southpaw jab, and then gradually, as the fight goes on, rounds 4 onwards into the middle section of the fight, the rounds 5 to 8, I see Fundora letting the combinations go and going through the gears, and I think Sebastian Fundora will stop Tim Tszyu in about 10 or 11 rounds. That's my prediction. I just worry about Tszyu's emotional and mental state, his psyche, after that shellacking from Murtazaliev. I don't think the Joseph Spencer fight put that to bed, because he was shell-shocked after that fight when he saw him interviewed. I don't think that goes away very quickly, and I think Fundora having the previous win over Tszyu, his confidence, he has shown that he can come back from adversity after being knocked out by Mendoza. To go in with Tszyu, have an absolute bloodbath and win, I just think he's got the momentum going. So I expect Tszyu to win, Fundora to win. I will say it will probably probably be a stoppage, a late stoppage, rounds 10 or 11. And I think, I think he will retain those WBO and WBC 154-pound belts. But what do you think? Do you agree? I know a lot of you guys who watch this are your Aussies. You may disagree with me. If you do disagree, I ain't got a problem with that. You can disagree. But tell me why you disagree. Let me know what your logic is, what you're thinking of. And I'll give you comments to read. Thanks very much for watching the video. If you did like it, please hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel. And by the way, as you can see, I'm wearing my Motor City Cobra t-shirt, or one of them. I've got two of these actually, different colours. But this is for Thomas Hearns, who had a hip replacement recently, about less than a week ago. You may have seen little clips of him on YouTube doing his rehab stuff. So all the best to the hitman, Thomas Hearns, one of my absolute favourite fighters of all time. Kill or be killed, Tommy Hearns. The only man to get knocked flat in 3 rounds, in this case by Marvin Hagler, and for his legacy to actually rise despite being knocked out in 3 rounds. Genius fighter, Tommy Hearns. Loved him. Get well soon, hitman. The Motor City Cobra lives. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I always appreciate your support. I'll get you later. Bye for now.